So, like the title of the video says, we're going to be covering Tesla, what it is, what it isn't, its augment, everything about it. I've done this video probably 15 times now. I'm trying to get it just right. I'm trying to be efficient and as concise as possible. There's just a lot to cover and a lot of nuance to this skill. Let's go ahead and jump right into it though. Let's look at the actual ability itself. Now, I don't have anything on my build currently, so let's just look at it. Drain of 25, 25 energy. That is whether you cast one Tesla grenade or four. So it doesn't actually increase the cost for casting four. That's pretty nice. It also means that we should always cast all four when we're going for a refresh. It doesn't take that long to charge, so just go ahead and charge all four at once. We have a damage amount of 150 and a damage per second of 25. The damage per second only happens to the enemy that each of these Teslas attach to. So it's a small amount of damage, but it does add up, and especially at lower levels it's kind of okay. Then you get a burst of AoE damage, that's that 150, every so often. Now every time that damage goes off, it will consume a charge. Once those charges are completely gone, once they hit zero, these Tesla grenades will disappear. Now, ability duration does affect the number of charges that you get, and it will be integral to keeping them up for the amount of time that you need them to. It is possible to reduce the number of charges all the way to 1 using mods. You can also change around strength and duration and all sorts of other things, range. But in general, like most abilities, you're not going to want to completely tank most of its stats. Now, the one thing you can really tank on this skill is efficiency. You don't need efficiency at all. This is a very cheap skill, and you can get 4 of them out for 25 mana, for 25 energy. That's nothing. The final note about this is that it has a 6-meter radius. Now, keep that 6-meter radius in your head for a little bit. It'll be important later when we talk about the augment. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this skill is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spawn us some chargers real quick, and I'm going to spawn them at level 1 just so we can see what this skill is and what it does. So I'm going to throw one of the little Tesla mines down here, and we're going to see what it does. It's going to do a little bit of damage. It's going to be a big AoE. And it's going to kill most of the things, and then it will seek out additional enemies until it runs out of charges. So it'll keep doing that, it'll keep rolling around, it'll keep following you until it finds all the enemies that it can. So just one more time, watch for it. It'll do a little bit of damage, and then after a slow charge up, it'll explode and deal a bunch of damage to everything. And then it'll seek enemies or follow you around. So there he is. Now these things will last forever until their charges are depleted. So they will follow you around for literally ever. Now if you're in the simulacrum, this can mess up your testing. One really cool thing is that you can just go into your build. You don't even have to move anything. Just look at it. And if you hit X, they basically get Thanos snapped out of existence, and it sounds really cool. I don't know if this is because of my character or my like phantasm or whatever that thing's called, but they just kind of like whoosh, out of there. So in any case, oh, and real quick to demonstrate, if I throw one mine, that's 25 energy. If I throw 4, that's 25 energy, just to demonstrate it. So now let's take a look at what the augment does. So the augment itself will when it attaches to an enemy, it will record all of the damage, it'll absorb that, and then release it in an AoE. Now this is really good, but it also limits it because of its damage type. So it deals electricity type damage. Now enemies that have a ton of armor will not be affected by this very much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this Tesla Bank and I'm going to run it against higher level enemies. So I'm going to go against 100s, and I'm just going to show you what I kind of mean by this. These chargers, they don't really have armor. So when I hit them, everything else dies when that one dies. So it records all of that damage, and it deals it in an AoE, and it's actually really cool and really effective if you're fighting the right enemy types. So what are the wrong enemy types? Basically anything with armor. So we're going to pick something with a lot of armor right here, heavy gunner, and we're going to do the exact same test. I'm going to throw one of these things at him. It's going to attach, and then I'm going to just shoot him up. I'm choosing the Baza because I can kind of control his damage. Notice the AoE amount that was dealt to them. Almost nothing. Also, the AoEs and the burst is like 1 in 4. So yeah. This is the amount of damage dealt to their health bar. Now, one really interesting thing to note is that this amount of damage spread is recorded by each individual Tesla. So if I come over here and I record, or if I use all 4, and they happen to attach on the same enemy, like that, it'll actually quadruple the amount of splash that gets hit. So notice, it did actually take out a decent chunk of their health. Okay? Now these split up a little bit. So you could eventually work out a couple heavier enemies via AoE. But it's not super efficient. It's not super good. I wouldn't focus around that. So just keep in mind that either the augment or the actual Tesla grenades themselves are not going to be effective in armor situations. If you want to try to force it, then you're going to have to run corrosive projection or have a high strength build using Bastille. Those two things can work. You saw even at level 100 the chargers, those are trash mobs, but they get annihilated very, very quickly. So that being said, the augment itself is really great when you can deal with enemies that don't have armor. Now we're going to get into some of the nuances of the augment though, because it's very weird. It reacts to some ability stats, but not others. So we can see that this has an 8-meter radius. Now, if you recall, our base Tesla AoE radius is 6 meters. Now, that's important because the Tesla AoE is 6 meters, and it stuns enemies at a very high rate. So the Tesla Bank AoE is bigger than that. So enemies caught in the stun should always be caught in the Tesla AoE. So it's really nice that Tesla Bank has a larger AoE than the stun radius of the base effect. That's very important for being an efficient skill, just working properly. So that's really nice that I hope they thought through that. I think that's why that's probably there. But this skill and this augment are both affected by the range mod. So what we can do is I'm going to get rid of these heavy gunners, and I'm going to pull in my chargers again, because these are a little bit better example for actually killing things. So I'm going to throw one mine out, and then I'm going to shoot, and you're going to notice the first 4 die, but the last 4 did not get caught up like before. So just to prove the point one last time, I'm going to switch it back off of the range mod, and you're going to see that they all do in fact get killed when I kill the one on the end. So the interesting thing about this isn't even that range affects this. I think that makes sense, right? So they all die. The weird thing about this skill is that the augment is not affected by strength, right? So when we look at the amount of damage being dealt, let's just do it with the just the augment for now. It will only record the amount of damage that has been dealt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just lower his health a little bit. So he's at a little bit under half health. I'm going to throw a mine on him, okay? Actually, he's a little bit over half health. He must have had a viral proc on him, I think. So I'm going to kill him, and you're going to see most of these other enemies are still at like 30-40%. And that's because we only did about 60% of the damage to him. So if I do this again, these guys should all be about the same health. If I kill this guy, they should all die. Oh, they must have like 10 health left. So we can see that the damage is actually being recorded, and it deals only the amount that it absorbs. Now, what's weird about this is, let's go ahead and throw on Blind Rage. That doubles our strength. We would expect to see, if we dealt 60% damage like in the previous test, that it would one-shot the enemies, even when he has 60% health left. So I think that's about right. Sure. So we see that he's missing health at all. That's all that really matters, is that he's missing any. And you see they still have health left. And we're going to do an exact opposite test as well. What I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to remove strength. And we're going to see that it doesn't matter at all. Like strength is irrelevant to this augment. And I forget which mod. God, there's so many mods. Overextended, that's the one. So this should lower our strength by 60%. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spawn them, and I'm going to throw a mine on them at full health. So if strength should affect this, we should basically not kill anything with the AoE. And yet they all die. So the augment is affected by range, but not by strength. I've confirmed this in testing. Hopefully it's not a simulacrum only thing. That would be bizarre that it's affected by one and not the other. I guess the simulacrum's done weird things before. So now that we kind of covered that, and the fact that probably the most important thing about, in general, the augment, the most important thing is that you can stack the amount of damage dealt. So, or the amount of damage absorbed. So what we're going to do is we're going to do one last test. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spawn a bunch of enemies. And I'm going to try to get this guy a little bit low. It's kind of hard. Alright, got to stop there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to try to charge up all four and hit that same guy with one, which I did. Oh, he's at half health. And notice everything died anyway. So if you have more than one Tesla Nervos on an enemy, it will spread the same amount of damage, and they do absorb separately. So you can stack them. This is really cool and really strong in a lot of situations. Now, let's go ahead and jump into what I think the builds will end up being. I have a couple variants that I've been running and testing out. One of them is a low-level sort of, what would you even consider it? A low-level sort of AFK farm. It's a little Octavia-ish. Basically, you just throw your bots out and you stand around. So what that looks like is this. So we have growing power. Effectively, I'm staying away from armor with this build. Like, it's not going to be good against armor. If you really want to try to take it into armored areas, you can run corrosive projection. With this specific build, in both of my variants actually, you can't really run Bastille. Now in this variant, you can't run Bastille because our efficiency is so bad, it's going to cost an arm and a leg to cast it. So Bastille is too expensive to cast in this build. In my other builds, it just doesn't have any strength. And like I kind of covered in my previous video, strength is what's actually stripping enemies of armor when they're inside Bastille. As well, it affects the number of enemies picked up by Bastille. So neither one of the Tesla builds that I have currently devised anyway are going to effectively be able to utilize armor stripping outside of corrosive projection. So this will always be good if you can have a 4-man team running corrosive projection. But otherwise, I would consider running growing power and just straight up going into like a corpus or a infested type mission. So going ahead and jumping into the build, I usually run coaction drift, growing power. We get a little bit of duration. We don't care about efficiency on this side. We get a bit of range and a bit of strength. Now this strength is not exactly representative of our actual strength. We have growing power and we also have energy conversion. So energy conversion is going to increase it by 50. Growing power is going to be by 25. With coaction drift, that ends up being about 33%. So we could get a little bit more than that as well if we did a more selfish Exilis mod, but we're going to stick with coaction drift for now. So between all of this, we should end up at about 300% strength. So this is going to be really nice for low-level AFK farming. I can show you what it looks like on level 100 enemies. It's pretty quick for level 100s, to be honest, and you're honestly not going to be AFK farming these kind of enemies. One interesting thing to note about this is if you noticed, I actually didn't get any of my bonuses that I was talking about earlier. So that was the kill speed without our growing power and without our energy conversion. So let's go ahead and simulate it one more time. We're going to pick up an energy orb. You see that energy conversion up at the top. And then I'm going to just proc a dot on one of the back guys real quick. And I'm going to charge up and throw. So we're going to see these guys get killed much, much faster this time. Almost in 2 bursts, really. Maybe it's about 3. They're kind of separated a little bit, so I couldn't tell very well. But you're going to be able to hit about 300% ability strength with that setup. It's going to kill low-level enemies very quickly. And these, I know, are just sort of your infantry, but that was level 100s. If we lower them down to 50, you're going to see they die extremely fast. Like one charge effectively kills infantry, and I think with this setup, we can check real quick, but I think we get 18 charges on our 18 charges on our Teslas. So it's going to eat through a lot of infantry in the amount of time. So next thing that we can go into is the second build that I think kind of arrives out of this, and that's the big shot. Anything that deals a lot of burst damage, you're going to effectively be able to turn a sniper rifle into an AoE weapon outside of armor. Now, you notice here I have corrosive projection. Whenever you can run corrosive projection, you can run this onto any map you want to. But if you have armor, it's going to be much, much, much harder. So what I would recommend outside of corrosive projection is possibly pistol amp or rifle amp if you're trying to do one of those weapons. So if you have a sniper or some single shot weapon of some kind that you want to use the appropriate aura. Otherwise, corrosive projection is probably your best bet here. So what this sort of looks like is I'm gonna spawn. Actually, let's kill these off, and let's go ahead and pop out a corpus, something a little bit higher. I don't know what this is. A Warden Eximus, sure. So I'm gonna simulate that, and what I'll do is I'm gonna try to throw, like from downtown, a thing and see if he goes at them. It does not appear like he did. So I'm going to run over here just for the sake of time and throw another one. Please jump on him. Alright, so... Oh, these are level 50s. Oops. So we saw all of those things got evaporated. Let me go ahead and switch over to a sniper to make it a little bit more... I don't know. We'll do Lanka. A little bit more appropriate for the build type. So I'm going to just put him 115. That's what I can do. So it's not the max, but it's what I can do. So over here, I'm going to throw one more. Now, once you have these out, it really won't matter as much. So I'll charge up, I'll shoot him, and it'll kill everything. So it's really, really nice when you start actually getting into higher level areas and you can just kind of look around. Like, it's what's interesting too. I find an interesting little separation between the builds. On the low level farming builds, you generally want your bots on the same target so they cycle through enemies faster and they get those big AoEs often, right? But on the big shot build, you actually want all of them on different enemies because one is going to be enough to kill everything. one just doing that overload absorption damage is going to be enough. So that's what I've sort of found out about Tesla and about its augment. I think there's a lot of potential in this skill. It has a very distinct disadvantage when being used against armored enemies. Keep that in mind when you're setting up your builds. I by no means am saying that these are perfect or optimized in any way. This is just what I've been kind of playing with and sort of developing into as I use them more often. I have used them in a number of missions. Um, I've been doing some testing over here with a slightly different variant as well. Um, so far, just one skill alone, this one skill and this one augment have been about as much fun to me as some frames are altogether. There's so much nuance and room for creativity with this skill. I hope you guys see it too. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, if you guys saw anything that I haven't seen, please leave it in the comments section below. And thanks for watching.